started? Okay. Welcome to my workshop, which is on pregnancy teenagers and crisis counselling. Just to start off with, if you could put your phones on silent. Yeah, I love engagement. I love that you're here. So. Our icebreaker, you almost get up. Okay. What we're going to start with, and you can come in like a circle. This is fun. Okay, you want to take your shoes off. I'm going to join in with you. And I want you to take 2 steps to like the shoes. So, like 1, 2, and then do 1 back. So do 1 back, and then do like 2 forward. Yeah, okay. So I want you to tell me. I'm not going to make you put on the shoes. That was an option, but we're not going to do that. I want you to tell me 2 things about the pair of shoes that you see in front of you.
I'll start. Mine are red and red knitted.
Okay. These ones are black and they're lady shaped.
It appears to be some kind of black mesh and with white soles.
They black and sandals.
These ones are fashionable and they're also black.
Yeah, okay, I can see mine are definitely men's shoes. They would not fit me. And yeah, obviously black walking shoes. Can you tell me anything about the person that's worn these shoes? Is there anything from looking at them that you can say about the person?
Sort of, yeah. It's got a lot of personality.
There are a lot of like creases and stuff like that, so you can tell that they like just somebody that sits around, they like walking.
Yeah.
These people like to be free.
This person likes to be comfortable and practical.
Nothing.
Nothing.
This person seems to keep up with the latest trends.
Okay, yeah, this person, they are fashionable, but they also could be walking far in their shoes. The point of this was to almost really say, the statement of put yourself in another person's shoes, and that's actually not really possible.
Yeah.
If you were to look at this pair in front of you, you could actually never fit this perfectly. We could never put ourselves in another person's shoes. And when we encounter every single person that we meet every day, we're encountering people, and we actually have no idea, based on such small perceptions of first-time encounters, we actually have no idea where they've walked. If you were to look at this pair of shoes, I have no idea where this pair has walked.
Yeah.
I have no idea what they did yesterday. I have no idea what they did last night or what they're going to do tomorrow. I have no idea how many children they have or if they're in love. I have no idea where they had their first kiss, or I have no idea about this person. I have no idea if they want to open up a hospital or if they actually hate people and would love to live with dogs for the rest of their lives. Yeah, and this is just such a beautiful example, I think, of looking at a pair of shoes. We actually have no idea about the person. A pair that might look incredibly fancy could have been a gift, or it could be the only pair of shoes that that person has. Doesn't necessarily mean they have lots of money. Or a pair that has walked really far and is full of mud might just be because they took a wrong step out of the car and they actually didn't walk for kilometers. Yeah, so this was just a very quick thing. You can put your shoes back on.
I'll wear those.
Mine back on.
Might as well be good.
And you got to know a bit about whoever was wearing the shoes in front of you. Okay.
Gosh. I just struggles with these on. I could like pause this video.
You can see all of these girls have different stories going on. She's just found out that she is pregnant, doesn't look really happy. She's actually carrying and she's now had a baby. And we kind of going to go through the different stages and seasons of teenagers, how teenagers think, and how they work. So that's what we're going to do. Okay. Before we start, go back. My reason for choosing this workshop, and I've also put it in your manual so you can also see, but my reason for choosing this workshop and a few of my objectives and a bit of my background. So I chose to do an intervention on teenage pregnancy and crisis counselling because it is a community issue that has been a part of each generation. It is an outcome that has greatly carried much shame to it, as well as a mindset of what is the quick fix. And we must do what we can to keep it in the dark. There are many prevention programs which are much needed and have done much good, but not many people know how to address a teenager who is already pregnant or has lost a baby. Family members, church, community, friends, school teachers, nurses, and the list continues, all come into contact with teenagers who have fallen pregnant, and many do not know how to help her or her partner with information, with options, and with support. Another issue of this idea is a quick fix. Counselors have agreed that once a teenage girl falls pregnant, her life will never be the same. Whether she chooses adoption, abortion, or to parent, both the girl and the boy, no matter what they choose, will always have been parents to an unborn child, even if for a short time. This is so important for them and those around them to be aware of, because often the girl, the boy, their family members, friends, or teachers will think that once she has an abortion that her life will go back to normal. This is the quick fix option. This is most certainly not the case, and whatever option they choose, they need to be made aware that there are both advantages and disadvantages, and each list could grow significantly once they have chosen. For example, the disadvantages list of an adoption may be almost non-existent in 10 years from her pregnancy, but the disadvantages list of an abortion may have grown significantly 10 years from her pregnancy. It is therefore needs to be made aware to the teenagers that counselling is available after they have made a decision and are struggling with the after effects. We may think the consequences of certain decisions are part of the whole deal, and that is true, but it does not mean that the man or woman has to live the way for the rest of their lives. Counselling is designed so that men and women can find freedom from the shame and condemnation that holds them back from living full lives. It is important for teenagers right at the start to understand why they feel what they feel, what they think what they think. It is also important for them to realize that there are many others in the same situation as they are. And when they see the situations from a way to help point of view, rather than a victim mentality, there's already a massive step of growth. So this is just a background on, and so much of this is so true. So this is the reason I'm doing it. It is such a huge issue in our community of teenagers falling pregnant and actually have no idea what to do afterwards. And so many go straight for an abortion or have no idea how to tell their parents, or and they don't even know that adoption is an option. And that's actually what we're going through now, is how do teenagers think, why do they go for a quick fix option, and how do each of those areas work, the parenting, adoption, or abortion. So what is a crisis? A crisis is an event, a set of circumstances, or a sudden realization that threatens one's emotional or physical well-being, and in turn interferes with one's routine daily living. A crisis poses danger to our sense of well-being, and at the same time provides us with an opportunity to grow and to learn. So what is a pregnancy crisis? A pregnancy becomes a crisis when the woman perceives the pregnancy to be a threat to her emotional and physical well-being. The pregnancy is perceived as a threat because of the people in her life, the circumstances that exist, and the pressures that bear down on her. In the context of such a crisis, abortion may be seen as an option in resolving her pregnancy. So what are some of the characteristics of a crisis? Individuals are unique and respond to events, circumstances, and realizations differently. What a crisis is for one person may not be a crisis for another person. A crisis usually involves a loss or a perceived loss, such as a loss of independence, loss of childhood, loss of security, or loss of a loved one. The nature of the crisis is such that the situation cannot be ignored. One is literally forced to make a decision one way or another. Old, tried and true methods of coping do not work in a crisis. In order to deal with a crisis situation, an individual must develop new coping strategies. So what that person used before to get through life doesn't work when they stage a crisis. And this refers to any kind of stage. If you to see what the definition of a crisis is, that could be a death of a loved one, it could be losing a job, it could be moving from a place, it could be getting kicked out of a place. All of that is part of crisis. So a lot of what we're learning has just been adapted to pregnancy and what it means when they suddenly find out they're pregnant and had not planned it. But almost all of it can be adapted to crisis as in itself. And the last one, not only does a crisis become upheaval in a person's physical and emotional life, but in their spiritual life as well. This causes a person to question her current worldview or belief systems. So, here are characteristics. So, someone came up with, specifically for teenagers, what is identity role versus confusion. And that's called the psychosexual mode, which is specific to the puberty stage. So as an adolescent, teens may not merely learn who they are. They must at the same time learn to define and invent themselves. Identities are tried out and new suits of clothes, like new suits of clothes. Role models may be parents, teachers, coaches, film stars, athletes, or outlaws. Parents can rightly guess that the latter is a potential nightmare, but parental perceptions can be distorted too. Teen rebelliousness sometimes takes a dark turn, but this does not mean that the youngster has lost his or her core set of values. The teen years are indeed a time of identity crisis, or in Erikson's terms, a turning point of increased vulnerability and heightened potential. That's such a beautiful statement to say about teenagers. And the basic task is, in Erikson's terms, the fidelity or truthfulness and consistency to one's core itself, or faith in one's ideology. Okay, so that's just a lot about the background about teenagers and the background on teenage pregnancy. So how are pregnancy rates taken? That was a lot of words I said now. How are pregnancy rates taken? Teenage pregnancy rates include those pregnancies that result in live births, as well as those ending in abortions or in other fetal losses, like in miscarriages. The way that they rate teenage pregnancies, if you were to look up stats, they use every pregnancy. So both those that actually delivered and those that didn't.
Would it also include pregnancy within a marriage, or is it just general?
Yeah, a general teenagers. So if teenagers have gotten married,
Okay.
then that would also come into it as well. So I think anyone that's under 18. So as you can see in here, the graph has lowered quite a lot. From in 1960, there were a lot more teenage pregnancies than 2015. That's because the rates of abortion have gone up. So you can kind of see, but this is very interesting. So they had over 8,000 teenage pregnancies in 1960, and now in 2015 they've only had just over 40,000 and 80,000. Yeah. So adolescent fertility rates are based on data on registered live births from vital registration systems or from the absence of such systems from surveys. The estimated rates are generally considered reliable measures of fertility in the recent past. We know information on age-specific fertility rates is available, so like in places where there wasn't stats for them to actually take in. A model is used to estimate the share of births to adolescents. For countries without registration systems, so where they actually don't register the baby at hospitals, or so that'd be like very rural third world countries. Fertility rates are generally based on explorations from trends observed in the consensus from years earlier. So if people aren't actually registering their babies, or there's no way to have a legal view of what's happening, they'll get people in the area to say within the schools and within communities and families, and then give out surveys to see how it's going. So that's how they're taking these rates. This is also quite a lot, but some facts about teenage pregnancy. About 60 million girls aged 15 to 19 and 1 million girls under 15 give birth every year, most in low and middle income countries. That's a really big number. Complications during pregnancy and childbirth are the second cause of death for 15 to 19-year-olds globally. Every year, 3 million girls aged 15 to 19 undergo unsafe abortions, which also means that so many die during that as well, or afterwards. Babies born to adolescent mothers face a substantial higher risk of dying than those born aged 20 to 24. There has been a marked, although uneven, decrease in the birth rates among adolescents since 1990, which we saw in the last graph. But some 11% of all births worldwide are still girls aged 15 to 19 years old. The vast majority of these births, 95%, occur in low and middle income countries. In 2014, the World Health Stats indicated that the average global birth rate among 15 to 19-year-olds is 49 per 1,000 girls. Country rates range from 1 to 299 births per 1,000 girls, with the highest rates in sub-Saharan Africa. The great majority of teen pregnancies, 75% in 2011, are unintended. So that means that 75% of these girls didn't intend to fall pregnant. So it was a crisis pregnancy, which is what we're going through. So only the last amount actually had planned to have a baby with whoever they were with. Although there has been a decrease in recent years from that 75%. In 2011, approximately 38% of unintended pregnancies to teens ended in abortion, and most of the remainder ended with a live birth. So 38% in 2011. So that's 3 in 10, almost 4 in 10 babies were aborted due to teenage pregnancies. Yeah.
Can you explain to us what a live birth is?
Yes. So a live birth would be where the girl carried the pregnancy through to delivery and gave birth to a baby that was healthy and beautiful. So if the baby even dies afterwards, it was still considered a live birth. So if the baby is like sick, or which can often happen also in third world countries, and where if they're very sick and they don't have access to healthcare, the baby can die in like the period afterwards. But if she gave birth to a baby that was living, then that's considered a live birth. So anything before then will be if it ended in abortion or miscarriage or a stillbirth, which is different. That means it was in the last period of the pregnancy, and then she actually had to give birth to the baby. So that's some negative consequences of pregnancy. Emotional crisis. So these are what happens when a girl has actually fallen pregnant. What are some of the consequences? Emotional crisis. Teenager may suffer emotional crisis if she does not want the baby, which may lead to rash behavior such as self-aborting or suicide. And if we self-aborting would be where she tries to
so medication.
Yeah, so medication, or there's like some people take acid, or there's so many ways. Obviously in the olden days where people didn't have much information, you hear of really horrible ways that they tried to. Obviously since it's legal now, there's no need for them to actually really do it to themselves. So it's not as self-harming. But if we look at this, if it says that almost all of them, and we said 75% were unintended. So we're reading this as the majority of people suffer with this as soon as they fall pregnant. They have worries about the future. Teenagers worry whether she will be able to cope with responsibility of being a mother. And again, this also goes with the father, worries with coping with being a dad. Worries about how the baby will impact their life and their dreams for the future.
So at this point then, do you find that it's often the partner or their parents that encourage the abortion?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we found at the place that I work is often it's the boyfriend that was kind of just having fun, and he was like, "You're amazing, but I also have 3 other girlfriends on the way," and that's a huge reality in the South African context, and especially in the informal settlements. It's so real, and they've got a girlfriend here, and they've got a girlfriend in another city, and so there's actually no reason for them to stay around and to father this baby. So that happens a lot of the time, whereas when he leaves, then she again is left with another loss, because now she's lost the father of the baby. So that could definitely be a reason why she aborts. There's a lot of times that the parents will force it if they have a lot of dreams for their child. So you hear it a lot of the parents' influence if they wanted to go to college and she was doing really well at school, and then they would often say, "No, you've got such a future, do this now." Sometimes it's herself, if she has a lot of dreams for the future, she just thinks, "How am I going to have a baby?" And almost all the time, adoption isn't an option. So they wouldn't think of carrying the pregnancy through and placing the baby for adoption. Like, to them, it's not, so unless they actually are made aware of it. So it's usually just abortion or keep the baby. Yeah.
Sorry to ask again, just going off what she said. I know it's different in various countries, but in South Africa, do the men have any sort of a say in what happens to the baby?
No, they don't. It's the woman's decision if she's going to have, even just a normal abortion, it's the woman's decision. So the man actually has no say. So,
am I right in saying that in other countries, it can
Yes.
sometimes be a split decision, that
Yeah,
the man does
absolutely.
also have a say?
yeah, absolutely. So in the South African context, he has no say. So she can walk straight into an abortion clinic and say, and there's nowhere where the dad has to sign off, or so that's also really happened where he's really wanted the baby and he was so excited to be a dad, and she just went ahead and had an abortion. In other countries, it is split, that you have to have both signatures to go through with it. So it would be if both of them say that we just can't do this. And then there's other countries where it's the father's say. So again, if the woman is so happy to be a mom and she's like pregnant, it's actually the father who gets to say, we're not having this baby. And by law, she has to go through with the abortion.
Is there actually a statistic of how many times it's happened that a woman will terminate the pregnancy and the man wants it?
I don't have any stats with me, and I actually don't know if there's been a lot of research done around that. All I know is that it's a very real thing. We've worked with, at the centre that I'm involved with, we've worked with men that have gone through post-abortion stress. So where there was a man specifically, which is why I know this for sure, his wife chose to abort his child. And years later, he had no idea, he actually had no idea, and years later she told him, and he went through a huge depression, and actually came for counselling. So actually not too sure if there are a lot of stats around that. It's a really good actually question. Okay. So they have worries about the future. The teenager worries whether they'll be able to cope with the responsibility of being parent. And the next one, smoking and drugs. A teen may not have the willpower to stop using substances, which ultimately harms the development of the baby. And this will definitely happen if she's in denial that she's pregnant. So that'll often happen where she only finds out even 6 or 7 months into the pregnancy, and she's carried on living life the way she has before. So they go out and they use drugs and they drink, and that will often happen, and she's just been in denial that she's pregnant until someone's actually, it's usually a mother or an aunt or a grandmother will actually force her to go to hospital to take a pregnancy test. So you can just imagine if she's carried on living life the way she thought without ever thinking of a developing baby, like the harm that can come to that child. And often with these teens as well, if it wasn't specifically with the boyfriend, because this is also just another issue, but if they were like sleeping around, then that's another factor to add in with this. So it's not just the smoking and drugs, but if she carries on sleeping around while she's pregnant, there's also so many other effects that can happen to the baby. So discontinuing education. They are forced to discontinue education. Some teens may never resume their education, which may lead to unemployment and poverty. So there's some schools in South Africa which allow the teenager to finish their matric if they've fallen pregnant. I know specifically there's a high school here that as soon as the principal finds out, the girl gets kicked out. So in those instances, it would be completely other factors of why she would choose abortion and would be to finish school. Nothing would happen to the dad of the child. So if he was in school and his girlfriend fell pregnant, they force her to leave and he can carry on. So of course that impacts education statistics, and especially in non-informal settlements. And if we're thinking of how few of them actually finish matric, and it's such a privilege when they actually do, and if so many of the girls are getting kicked out because they fall pregnant, and so many never go back. So they'll stay at home with their child while their parents still work, and actually just never finish their education. A lot of them fall into depression. So a teenager may experience depression while trying to process the emotions of having a baby. Fluctuating hormones also contribute to depression, which happens in any pregnant woman. Health risks. The teenager's body is not sufficiently developed to carry a baby, and this may pose serious health risks, which may result in death. So this is specifically if the girl is too young. There's been so many that once they're 17, 18, it's like a normal childbirth, they wouldn't. But because their body is still developing, you can just imagine if all these changes are happening to them, and they have to deal with that. Okay, so we have another activity. You can all get up. Oh, this is just while you are, these are often some of the labels that are put on teenagers, and referring back to the shoe game that we played. Those are so many names that are labeled onto teenagers that are fallen pregnant, or onto the dad of the baby. And just as we learned before, you have no idea what's actually happened to that person, and you have no idea where they walked, how they fell pregnant, who they were with, what they've learned, what their thoughts were, how they feel about tomorrow even, let alone having this baby a few months from now. And society is so quick to put labels on, and they're so quick to judge teenagers that are fallen pregnant without any realization of what's actually happened. So that was just okay, so you can all get in a circle for this one. Try not to break. Okay. So, and also don't throw too hard because we have stuff around like the TV. But I've got a rock here. I want you to throw the rock to each other and to whoever you want to. So I'm just gonna.
I'm so bad at catching.
In this case.
We're gonna swap that one out. So that was the rock. So just remember your experience with this.
Okay.
And as you're going, I want you to start thinking of the aspect of communication between two people while we throw these. Okay? So if you thought of the aspect of communication between two people throwing the rock, now you have to do it with people.
Knew that was coming.
precious baby.
Okay. We're gonna do it with the balloon.
I want it
Yeah. Okay, I've got this really cool thing, which is a wine cork. You have to be super careful because it's quite sharp.
I'm like already praying.
And remember, we're thinking about communication with two people.
Okay.
Communicate.
Communication. Oh.
Don't want to catch it.
Yeah. Stabs hand open.
Stabs hand open.
Not again. Communicating, we just make you awkward sounds.
Okay, so that's the wine cork, remember?
Okay.
Okay, now.
Watch our communication skills now.
Okay.
Please be boiled.
Somebody's gonna try to warn me. No.
Are you really going for that?
Okay, yeah, we didn't break it. Were there any comments or anything that you felt you could comment on to do with the different aspects that we threw to each other?
I think
So I can hold them.
it's a lot of cooperation that goes
Well, I
into
mean, it
this.
depends on what it was.
Yeah.
You're throwing it in different ways.
Yeah, I mean, if it was, it's probably silly to say that it was a baby or a lot of more communication.
Yeah, and there was a lot of like, even just like eye contact, like kind of being like,
Yes, yeah.
And there's something sort of more like casual to, like the balloon and the soft little fluffy thing.
Yeah.
It's, you can throw it and it won't hurt the other person.
Yeah.
It's really as much communication.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you have anything? No? I thought this was such a, when I found these things, I just started thinking, when we communicate with people, and we always hear about how it's two ways. So it's the person that's giving, but also the person that's receiving. So the way that we threw these was very much based on the person that threw and the person that caught. And sometimes we can completely lose communication. If we thought of these as communication and different ways of communicating, we can sometimes completely lose it. And it's very much based on both the giving and receiving. And with counseling, that's exactly how it works. The way that she gives you, or it's with mentoring, it's with friendships, it's with family, it's with every person we encounter, we deal with this. And sometimes we just completely lose it with people. Not necessarily emotion-wise lose it, but like we just don't click, or something goes wrong and we just can't get it. But if we were to look back to see how did that person give, like how did they send it, and what did they send? If it's the rock, sometimes it can hurt your hands a little bit, and if it knocks you on the knuckle, and based on how you caught that as well. And the balloon was just way more free, and it's kind of easier to go with the balloon because it's so slow, and the balloon comes, and it was easier to actually do it because that's just the way the balloon was. And when you've got the pokey thing, you have to be so careful on how we caught that, and almost would prefer to drop it than to actually catch that. And with some people, that's the way it is.
Sure.
We almost prefer to not actually engage with them or to fully understand, just because we're so scared of actually catching what they say. And in the end, no one actually got hurt with this, because the way it lands is with the soft part on the bottom, and the pokey thing always stays at the top. So if you actually realize that with the egg, it was such a fragile topic that if anyone caught it, the person sending knew that it wasn't a boiled egg. They knew how fragile this egg was. And if we were to catch something in a harsh way, if we were to catch something by smacking your hands together, we would have smashed the egg and the communication would be completely lost. And that's how it is specifically with a very sensitive issue. And I think we've all had that where we've told someone something, or we really wanted to share a part, we wanted to trust them, and they just completely didn't get it. They were distracted, they started talking about themselves, they left the room or went on their phones, and all of that is almost like smashing that egg. It completely stops you in your tracks.
Yeah.
And so this was just a little communication exercise. You can sit down.
That was cool.
Okay. So that led us into our next part, which is communication skills with counseling adolescents. So this was something that a counselor and I guess a psychologist came up with, this: how do you actually connect well with a teenager? If you were sitting with someone, it doesn't help to be completely, just as we said with communication, especially if they're in crisis. We have to be so careful on how we're actually catching what they give us and on what we are throwing back. And yeah, so if we go through some communication skills, so they say as a counselor, as a friend, we all have friends that are teenagers. A lot of us are still, maybe have still the teenage hormone, like brain cells in us. I say teenage hormones, but no. Yeah, so the first thing is to be flexible. An adolescent's emotions are constantly fluctuating between being a child and being a grown-up. Erratic behaviors and mood swings should not be automatically judged, but be viewed from a developing stage with which an adolescent finds him or herself. So mood swings are just a part of teenagers. If you want to be friends with someone counseling, well, you have to, yeah. Keep the discussion concrete. Avoid abstract vocabulary. They require answers that can relate to them immediately. Acknowledge their needs to express their opinions on societal and communal issues. It signals their entry into adulthood. So when teenagers are actually wanting to go into issues that are super important to them, let them, because it shows that they're starting to think and they're starting to become way more serious about society. Indicate respect and acceptance. An adolescent needs ongoing assurance that they are recognized and respected. Even when you disagree with them, they need to feel that their opinions and feelings are taken seriously. Due to the age gap, be prepared to be accused if not understanding or being with it. And that's so okay. We have to go with them. And just as with so much of the communication, if we were reaching in another way where the person through, that completely lost. You have to go where they're going. And if they start talking about something, if they start going in a certain way, we have to go where they go, even if we choose to bring it back. So that's how communication works. Go where they go, and if I choose to bring it back to a certain topic, because that's not necessarily relevant, or it's not, yeah, I can choose to bring it back, but we have to go where they go. Set guidelines and limitations. Young people require clear boundaries. It is a stage of experimentation, and they need to feel that there are boundaries in so far as the extent to which they experiment. So when you experiment, there needs to be boundaries to show where they can experiment within. Just as gardens have fences, just to show those children how far they can play out. And that's what needs to happen as well. Be consistent. It is difficult for an adolescent to keep up with all the changes in the world. It is important that they feel that the helping relationship with their counselor is one that is consistent and stable. Be strict about unacceptable behavior. Acknowledge their need for experimentation, but also stress the importance of taking responsibility for their actions. Be strict upon rules which have been agreed upon. adolescents will push and test your boundaries. Discuss rather than advise. Make them feel part of the decision-making process by discussing matters that affect them, rather than advising them. Be absolutely honest. Give straight and frank answers, even if they're embarrassing, like issues like drugs and sex. If you're unclear about an answer, admit it rather than fabricating an answer. And like making it up to look wise. Just be honest with them. Keep focus in the present. Concern with the adolescent is primarily in the here and now. Historical observations and compromises, consequences of problems in the future are largely irrelevant. Be objective. Do not become emotionally entangled. Adolescents will attempt to manipulate situations to test your reaction. Do not succumb to the game playing. Maintain grown-up responses. So that's saying that even if they start to say something that you can be like, it's alright, it's okay, go ahead. Rather stay where you are, and they know exactly where your yes and your no is. And so much respect will come out of that as well. Avoid labeling. Criticize the behavior, not the individual. Labels such as dumb, lazy, serve no purpose. Use and observe body language. Young people are not always able to articulate what they are feeling. Observe their body language, expressions, mannerisms, gestures, and other non-verbal cues for clues of what they're really feeling. So when we can't actually pinpoint what we're feeling, it's so easy to say certain things. And it's so important, and this is so much more in a counseling situation, in friendships, to actually say what are they actually saying, what are they actually meaning, even when they can't pinpoint the actual issue. Exercise patience. Because adolescence is a process of change, young people may not respond as quickly to the helping process. Be patient and understand them in light of the fact that they need time to process in order for behavioral changes to take place. And then serve as a model. Serve as a model of displaying new adult ways of behaving and communicating. So these are just some very cool ways of how to really connect.
Just a small question. With regards to this list as a whole, I understand in this context what you mean by be objective, but this is an extremely subjective thing. Am I right in saying that? Because you can meet some adolescents who will fit the bill of an adolescent perfectly, but then you can meet other adolescents that are more mature in their years, so you probably have to adjust what's on you.
Yes,
Is that
absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. That was, I said very well. This is very much a typical, this was made on as I said, it was like a psychologist that wrote this up, so it's a very typical teenager. And it was actually not so long ago that we were all teenagers, and I bet we can remember thinking, I hate when people put like labels on us or make us think that we were in a certain box. And again, like this can really say that people in boxes, which is completely not the case. But this is really just a way of how to connect. And it's so much more about actual people skills than about being a teen. So things like not putting labels on how to go where they're going. And to still have boundaries, we need that anyway. Okay, so what are concepts of teenagers today? So Africa Cares is an organisation that are in Durban. They're situated in Durban, and they run all the centres in Africa. At the moment, they've got about 70 or 80 centres. They're a non-profit government organisation, and they provide they're a national networking body for pregnancy crisis centres, children's shelters, sex education programs in South Africa. They released a counselling program called The Journey, and in it they mention that before counselling any teenagers, it's important to understand 4 aspects about who they are. And Africa Cares is actually the covering body of the centre that I work with, and it's such a beautiful program. And so the 4 things that they have said is emotional hunger, and these are aspects of teenagers themselves. So emotional hunger. One of the biggest problems for teenagers today is their soul hunger, so the hunger of their souls. They lack and therefore crave attention, acceptance and affirmation. And again, this is one of those, it's a very typical teenage very much done on a very general state. Yeah, status. These things are normally provided by loving parents, the attention, acceptance, and affirmation. But if parents have been deprived of these things themselves, they may be unable to nurture their children towards wholeness. Teenagers then grow up with empty emotional tanks that demand to be filled. Attention, acceptance, and affirmation in turn nurture a sense of significance, self-worth, and security. If these cannot be obtained from parents, teenagers attempt to provide them in other ways, or alternatively dull their sense of need. So it can be either two ways. If they aren't getting it at home, if they don't feel accepted and loved and nurtured and full at home, we'll find other ways to fill our tanks. Otherwise, you completely numb that need, and they just become that they don't need human interaction. It becomes a hard, and they build up their wall around them to be safe. Independence versus dependency. Growing up is one long process of gaining independence from one's parents. In the teenage years, this is more obvious, especially if they leave home. However, leaving home is not the final act of becoming independent. It is a gradual process that takes place over several years. A teenager may have left home physically, but the emotional ties with home take longer to loosen. It is therefore important to remember that however independent a teenager appears to be, the ties with parents are usually more important than they care to admit. Parents are always significant. The third one, parents versus peers. Although teenagers long for parental attention, acceptance by their peers is also crucial. Teenagers are now a part of what has been called the sibling society, referring to their peers rather than older, wiser people around them. They rely on one another for guidance, yet have little accumulated wisdom to deal with major problems, such as a crisis pregnancy and post-abortion stress. So this is saying that before now, so often teenagers would go to a mentoring or a teacher or a parent and would talk about issues going on in their lives, whereas so almost everyone now would actually speak in their friendship groups about it, or you speak to your best friend rather than go to someone that's older. Whereas how much of that knowledge does your friend actually have, or the wisdom to give insight into that situation? They can be there to link arms with you, but they can't actually push you to a higher place or to maybe give an objective point of view. Their lack of experience also means that they lack clear boundaries. Their boundaries are blurred. They have not had time to formulate their own values or develop their decision-making skills significantly. And then the lack of awareness and communicating skills. Many teenagers lack self-awareness to such a degree that they cannot name the emotions they experience. They feel powerless and helpless to deal with the circumstances that life brings to them, whilst desperate to gain a sense of control over their lives. The lack of meaningful interaction between the generations means that many teenagers are underdeveloped in their ability to communicate feelings and experiences. Teenagers live in a world that is visually orientated, thriving on images rather than words. Symbols, therefore, are far more powerful in reaching teenagers, even in the counseling room. So this is saying, just to be so relevant, it doesn't help to have someone that speaks and give lectures and their minds are just completely somewhere else. It needs to be pictures and colour and yes. Okay, so we're actually going to take a break now for some tea and coffee. So, and then we'll be back in 15 minutes. Welcome back from our tea break. I hope you all feel energized and full of tea and coffee and cake. We're going to start off with a video. So.
Hi, thank you. I love your enthusiasm. Your energy and excitement is really what makes me love my job. And my job is to study the adolescent brain. I'm a scientist at UCLA, as Jake said. So scientists have studied the brain for centuries, but it's only been in the last 15 years or so that we've discovered one of the most fascinating things. And that is that your brain changes brain is changing in response to my voice, in response to the person next to you. And your experiences and the people you affiliate with shape the way your brain ultimately develops. We also know that the brain matures and continues to do so past childhood and into the teenage years and well into your mid-20s. So most of you in this room today, as middle and high school students, don't yet have a fully mature brain. But this is actually really beneficial if we think about one of the functions of adolescence, which is to establish your independence from a caregiver. Because your brain, as an adolescent, is built to help you do that. Compared to children and adults, the teenage brain is really good at seeking out new experiences, enjoying thrills, and seeking out risks. It's also really good at recognizing social or being sensitive to social and emotional information. And so for that reason, the teenage brain is really responsive to rewards and emotions when making decisions. And in my laboratory at UCLA and laboratories all around the world, we're interested in uncovering that very question. How does the teenage brain make decisions? One of the first discoveries relevant to this topic was made when we discovered that the part of your brain in the very front, called the prefrontal cortex, which is the last brain region to develop, because your brain develops from the back to the front, continues to change up until the mid-20s. And the reason this is relevant is because the prefrontal cortex is a part of your brain that helps you think about the consequences or potential consequences of your actions before you do them. It helps you regulate your behavior and your emotions. And so it makes sense that if this part of the brain isn't fully available until well past adolescence, then teenagers may make more impulsive decisions with less regard for the potential future consequences. But we now know that the story is far more interesting and complicated than that. And in fact, what we really need to do is think about how brain regions that are not at the surface of your brain, but in the deeper layers, how they change. And one region we focus on is called the striatum. And the striatum is the key component of the reward system. So when you receive something that you find rewarding, your striatum is very responsive and it releases something called dopamine. And this is the case not just in humans, but in kids, in mice, in rats, in monkeys. All of these organisms respond really with a lot of excitement in their brain when they get something they like. So in my lab, we study this reward system across development, and especially teenagers. And we do that by asking people to come to the laboratory and perform what's called a functional magnetic resonance imaging scan, or fMRI. And the beauty of fMRI is that you can take a snapshot of the brain in motion. So while you are experiencing something you like, or while you are making a decision, we capture how your brain is responding to that, how your brain is active. And so to study the reward system, what we did is not simply show people pictures of reward, which is what mostly happens in brain imaging studies. But instead what we did is we actually gave someone a reward. And what's something that people find rewarding? Sugar. So what we did is we asked people to come to the lab. We asked a group of teenagers and a group of adults. And while they were in the MRI, we hooked them up to a straw. And we fed them squirts of sugar water every so often. And first we asked them whether they liked it. Maybe they weren't going to like the sugar as much as we thought. But they actually did. This is a rating scale asking them, how much do you like the sugar? And the average response is in red for the teenage group, and the adults is shown in white. And you can see that everybody liked it, but it's the teenage group who showed this exaggerated sensitivity. They really liked it. So we started to wonder whether there was something neurobiological that represented this difference. So instead of focusing on the prefrontal cortex, which is what a lot of brain scientists who study adolescence do, we looked at the deeper layers of the brain. So in this image, which is actually a real human brain image, averaged together among all our participants, we saw that in the deeper layers, here represented with this this yellow activation, the striatum was really excited to the sugar water. And this was across all age groups. But the really cool thing was observed when we looked at the differences between the teenagers and the adults. Here again, I'm showing you the magnitude of activation, that is, how excitable the brain was in the teenagers compared to the adults. So this very simple reward of sugar. And you can see that the teenagers were much more excited to the same exact stimulus and in the same exact region of the brain. It's the teenage brain that was going crazy. It was really excited to get it. And when we associated that with their ratings of the sugar, it was only in the teenage group where we saw that people who showed greater activation in the brain in response to the sugar also told us they liked it more. So that means that in real time, at the very moment your brain gets something that it likes, it will make you think that it's better. And you can think or imagine that in future circumstances, your brain will encode that information and remember that you liked it. So it will bias your decisions toward getting more rewards. And that's what happens during adolescence. But to ensure that this wasn't just specific to something as simple as sugar, we gave people something else that everybody likes. And we did this while they were in the MRI. And what's something else that everyone loves to get? Money, right? Money. Everybody likes money. So we brought in a whole separate group of teenagers and adults. And this time we threw in a group of kids in there who were between about 7 and 10. And we found that, again, the part of the brain that was most responsive was the striatum, shown here on the left. This is a brain scan showing the average activation. But what you can see really clearly is that not only were the teenagers more reactive to the money than the adults, which you might argue is because maybe they have less of it, they like it more. But that's not the case, because the kids probably had even less than the teenagers, and the teens still showed this exaggerated response. So this is telling us that there's something really special about the teenage brain. There's a sharp increase in sensitivity to rewards and novel information from childhood to adolescence, but then there's a sharp decrease from adolescence to adulthood. And that probably has something to do with the fact that the prefrontal cortex is starting to come online as people transition into adulthood and regulating the emotional response to the rewarding information. So what does this all mean for behavior and for your everyday life? Well, there are a few things. From my perspective, this is a really exciting time to study the teenage brain. Although scientists have made significant progress in understanding what makes the teenage brain unique, we still have a lot to learn. For instance, we're just now starting to appreciate that this sensitivity in the brain to rewards and to emotions might lead teenagers to make poor choices sometimes, but it also presents an excellent opportunity to seek out new adventures, to meet new people, and to confront interesting challenges in ways that people don't typically do later in life. And I predict that as we continue to conduct more of this research, we will learn how to take advantage of the sensitivity of the brain during adolescence to generate new ideas and to promote creative thinking. There's a lot that we can and will learn from the adolescent brain and from adolescence in general in the coming decade. And perhaps we'll learn that taking risks and seeking out rewards are really adaptive behaviors in many contexts that actually lead to really good decisions and that help individuals navigate the often challenging and intimidating transition from childhood to adulthood. So with that, I encourage you to savor the excitability of your teenage brain and to enjoy all the new people you meet and all the adventures you take. Thank you.
Yay, okay. So, I thought this video was so relevant and it was so beautiful, and the way that she describes the teenage brain very much shows that if we were to see a teenager in crisis or a teenager that's fallen pregnant, there's so much more to it. There's actually their physical brain that has a part to play with that. It's not just their choices, it's not just the environment, it's not just bad upbringing or morals, or that all has a part to play. Their own value system and beliefs and their friendship groups, and obviously influence from a boyfriend or whoever. But the way that this showed it was it's actually the physical brain that has a part to play in a teenager falling pregnant. the part of their brain, and that's up until the mid-20s, so all of us are still in that, still hasn't fully developed in that arena. And the way that they got so excited when they were rewarded, when it was something they liked, that part of the brain actually reminded them next time. And it was so easy to fall back and back and back and back into those patterns, which is exactly the way that like addiction would work, or teenagers that have specifically become addicted to something, or why they would stay with a boyfriend or someone that they like, even when they know it's not good. It might be because their brain is just completely reminding them over and over and over, and it's so easy to go back to that. So there's actually so much more to your physical brain that has a part to play in teenagers falling pregnant as well. So that was that. And then there was such a beautiful letter that I actually wanted to read out to you, and it was written by a woman called Brittany. She fell pregnant when she was 17, and when she turned 32, she wrote a letter back to herself, to the 17-year-old version of herself, and you can see her there. And what she said was, "Dear 17-year-old Brittany, as your friends prepare for graduation parties and the first days of college, you will be holding your swollen belly, feeling your baby girl kick, and contemplating if you have what it takes to be a mom. You will feel uncomfortable in the final weeks before graduation because you can hear the whispers, see the looks, and catch your classmates trying to see if they can notice a baby bump. You will receive a phone call from a fellow classmate letting you know that you will be nothing because you're 17 and pregnant. He will tell you how everyone had thought you would be successful, but now you will never have a good man, and that is your life is finished. And that your life is finished. And what's more, you will believe that. You won't let anyone know that you believe it, but it sticks with you because you've already had those fears. And now hearing those words solidifies your own insecurities. Don't worry and don't be frightened. You don't know right now, and turn your fears over to God, but you will learn. You will also learn that the trials you will face over the next 10 years will clothe you in strength, perseverance, and resilience. You will make countless mistakes, fall apart, and slip into a dark hole of feeling alone, unwanted, used, and broken. Your spirit will be broken, and you'll become all the negative things they said you would become, because you allowed them to label you as such. You will learn that labels create limits. You'll shut out the people that care about you. You'll prance around like you have your life together, only to cry alone at night, or party hard to make yourself feel better. You'll become a single mother of 2 by the age of 20. You'll pray to a God that you're not even sure exists, or maybe he doesn't like you, begging for him to turn away your pain and hardships. The details are grim, and I won't go into them, because once you've decided to break through the chains, a new person that you were meant to be emerged. You wanted to be stronger, love more, give back, and find your faith. You will find that God loves you, forgives you, and always liked and loved you. You can't fathom how you will ever see the glass half full, but keep pushing, because you will find comfort in learning that life is messy and hard, but the rewards are so much bigger. You will learn that failing does not make you a failure, and that you're responsible for developing your gifts. And while your adult self will struggle with seeking others' validation, you will know that it shouldn't consume you. One day you will stop letting everyone else tell you who you should be or who you are. You will tell that 17-year-old voice inside to stop when it creeps up on you and tries to get in the way of your authenticity, self-confidence, and goals. You will fall apart again and again, but in time you will learn that only you can pick yourself up and try again. And while you're still trying to figure out yourself and how to be a successful young adult, you will have 2 little girls looking up to you and counting on you. You won't stop fighting, because you will learn that you deserve the best. Those girls deserve the best, and you will know that you're capable of. You'll expect more from yourself and your family. I sit here with a lump in my throat and fighting back tears because I'm so proud of you. There's still work to be done on the inside, but your life is most definitely not finished. You are happy and stronger. Believe in yourself, and you won't let your past define you. Blessings and love, 32-year-old Brittany. that is just such a beautiful representation of how beauty can come out of such a mess. And so many of these girls are being told things, and almost all the communities around them, and even the labels that they put on themselves, and from their boyfriends and the teachers, and so much is going on that's almost stopping them from ever breaking out of that, those boundaries. And just as you said it, she believed it for so long, she heard that voice, and she lived out the words that they spoke over her. And she actually had to learn that none of this was who she was, and that's a huge part of the beauty it is to actually work with these teenagers and with these girls that are fallen pregnant. And to actually say, like, there's so much more. It's such a beautiful life that they could have still. Yeah, so I thought that was beautiful. I also put that in your manuals. This is something I just wanted to show you. 3 years ago, I helped plan a conference for teenage pregnant girls. It was in my second year at the Gap Year, and I've been working with them for a few months. And yeah, and we did a conference for them. We had about 70 or 80 people that came. We told them to bring their boyfriends and the aunt and the mother and the children, and it was just such a beautiful time. You can see there, those were some of our teenagers. I used her photo on the front of your manual.
Beautiful.
These were some of the students that were doing the second year program with me, and they all got involved. We had people speaking. We started off with worship, and we based the conference on a concept. We named a Daughter Arise, and that was the name that we gave to the conference. We based it on the verse of Isaiah 52 verse 2, which is awaken, 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 clothe yourself with strength, O Zion. Put on your garments of splendor, O Jerusalem, holy city. Shake off your dust, rise up and sit on your throne, O Jerusalem. Remove the chains from your neck, O captive daughter of Zion. And the whole point of the conference was just a breaking off of chains. It was just really a daughter rise out of the dust and of everything that held them back before. And it was such a beautiful, yeah, we had people speaking on adoption, and on there was testimonies of women who had been teen moms, and they were so successful and married and loving life. And we also had testimonies of women who had had abortions, and they spoken. We had maternity health and just sexuality and identity, and yeah, it was really beautiful. So I'm going to bring that in quickly.
That's so beautiful.
So yeah. Okay. Now we have another exercise. I'm going to hand out some scissors. You're going to have to just shade them between you. And you can see in your in your handouts, I've put in some pictures. So this is a tool. I just want you to cut. I actually want you to do this because we're going to do this as an exercise. So I want you to cut out the faces in your sheets. So there's 2 sheets that are in there. I think there's 43 emotions. Yeah, so we can do that for the next little bit.
On this white sheet.
Yeah, the white sheet was just an extra. I just thought that if you wanted to have it up on your wall in your room to say, how do I feel today? You can point to one of the emojis. So we're using the colored ones, we're using these ones.
Do we need to cut them all out individually?
Yeah, just like really quickly. Or, okay, because this is, don't worry about it because we also, but you have a blank piece of paper at the back of your sheets. So once you get your blank piece of paper, and you can just have your 2 handouts in front of you with all the emotions and all the colors. And when you go home, I actually really want you to keep these because it's such a beautiful tool of when we actually don't understand ourselves. And I'm going to explain what we're going to do now. And this is something that you can do on yourselves over and over and over again. And actually using these. This is a counseling tool that the Africa Cares that I spoke about that cover all the centres in Africa. This is a tool that they use and that they released. And you can use it in so many different ways. I've got my actual pack here that I have. So these are the actual cards. And if you can see them. And I think there's 43 emotions of actual cards. So when you get home, if you cut them out, you can make yourself a little pack. And yeah, so this is just a little extra thing to take home. So what I want you to do, I hope you all have your pens. And I want you to write down something that happened in your past that you felt was just a super sucky situation. That if you can look back and whether it was a breakup or you had to move, or it doesn't have to be something that's really big. It can be, yeah, but something that you felt was maybe like a crisis situation, and you went through a really bad time because of this. And then once you've thought of your situation, I want you to look at your faces. That's what these are called. I want you to look at the emotions and to pick 10 that you could put next to that situation.
Do we like write them on the sheet?
Yeah, I'm not going to take these in. This is purely for you. I know 10 are quite a lot, so we can maybe do 5.
10 things that.
10 emotions that you would like put next to it.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's also something that you can take home and like finish off by yourself. I just wanted to explain to you how these can be used. And if you're done with that one, then I also want you to do a future situation. So something that you're hoping will come to pass. So something that you're just like super excited about that's going to happen in the next year, let's say. And then also put in your emotions to do with that. Yay! And you can also keep, like, these are for you to take home, so you can also use them on. So, this is such a good tool for ourselves as well as when we're with other people. So on ourselves, I'm going to explain both ways, but on ourselves is such a good processing tool. Sometimes we actually don't know how to process ourselves, or we know that we feel a certain way, we know we feel overwhelmed, or we know that we have a decision to make, and we actually have no idea where to start. And this is such a good way for ourselves to have the emotions out. There's 43 emotions on there, 44 I think, and for us to be able to sit and to say, like, so detailed and so specific, how do I feel? It's not just that there's anger, or it's not just that there's this large sadness emotion. That can get broken up into so many smaller portions. And so it's such a good processing tool for ourselves, and a debriefing tool. So the reason I say to do it on something that's happened in the past is, again, when we've gone through something, or we just feel so much emotion, and then we think, I don't even know, like we don't even know how to speak to someone else about it, let alone feel deeply. And these are such a good, and that's really why I wanted to use them with you, and to really say, how did I feel before now? And just to even write down the emotions, and on something to come. We can do it on a decision that we have to make in the future, or something that we're super excited about. And to even break it up further, which is actually used in counseling, is to actually pinpoint. So if something has happened in your life, so let's say a girl was pregnant. So now this is how we can use it with someone else as with ourselves. But if a girl falls pregnant, you could give her these emotions and say to her, tell me how you feel right now based on these. And one of the ways, there's so much that you can do with this, and there's no like specific structure, but one of the ways is to make 3 piles, and it's just a way, like an easy way of organizing it. But you have the not at all pile, so you don't feel anything towards this event. So she fell pregnant, she feels nothing towards the event. She might say, I feel no excitement. That would go in the not at all. The sometimes, so she feels it on and off. And if it means that she felt it 2 months ago, then that would still go in the sometimes pile. So you have the not at all, the sometimes, and the all the time. So to do this on yourself, to say all the time I feel stressed, you can actually start to understand which of your emotions are in the all the time, which in the sometimes and the not at all. There's certain emotions that are quite dangerous if they're in the not at all. If you never feel angry, or you never feel joy, or you never feel like any of those deep emotions, if all of those are in the not at all, you can kind of see that someone may be in a numb stage or in a denial stage, because they actually feel none of those deep emotions. So it's such a good way to start to identify. And so on ourselves and with other people, and then to break it up even further would be to say, how do you specifically feel this emotion to do with the event? So it can take a long time, but it's the most incredible, intense, almost unraveling tool. And to say about the teenage pregnancy, why do you feel disappointed? And that would be a way to actually say, I feel disappointed because I lost dreams of my future. I feel disappointed because the boy left. I feel disappointed because of my parents. And to really unravel each emotion specifically. And by the end of it, if you've unraveled and unraveled and unraveled, we're no longer just sitting, and this is ourselves and someone else, no longer just sitting with a big pile of emotions and don't know where to start, or don't even know how to start to feel. So you have your 3 piles, put the emotions in with a certain decision that you have to make in the future. If you guys are deciding what to do next year, or do this and say, okay, how do I feel? What is my pile? And not at all is sometimes and all the times. And why do I feel that way about this decision? And you'll suddenly start to see it's just such an easy way to go in. You're not just left with a wide open space. So this was just a very cool going home exercise. So now this is what we're going to end off with, is on the 3 options that we counsel a girl through. So there's 3 options that any pregnant teenager has. Anyone. So they have the option to parent, they have the option of adoption, or fostering, but we haven't really put fostering in. But it's adoption, fostering, or they have abortion. We're going to start with abortion. And you've all got the more detail further in your handouts. So abortion, there's two types of abortion. There's medical abortion, where pregnancy is ended in abortion-inducing medication. And there's two types, the mifepristone and the mifepristol. The mifepristone blocks the action of the hormone progesterone and is needed for an embryo to grow. 1 to 2 days later, the other hormone is given, and this causes the uterus to go into labor and push the baby out. So that's the medical one, where they take a tablet. The surgical one is with physical methods, and they use the pregnancy with the suction abortion. The woman undergoes 3 main sources of discomfort: anxiety, cervical stretching, and uterine cramping. So there are many physical and emotional side effects of abortion, which she needs to be made aware of as well. Some such are cervical injury, pelvic infection, damage to the womb, relative infertility, disturbances with sleep, anger, and depression. So there's so many more effects on abortion, and I've just put in quickly just what it is. The laws in South Africa is from the age of 12, it's legal for anyone to have an abortion with no parental consent. So that would completely come into teenage pregnancy. If from the age of 12 they can walk into a clinic, an abortion clinic, and completely legal up until 12 weeks. The sister has to take a scan to see that it's under 12 weeks, unless there is there's a few other reasons why they would do it longer, or even up until full term, that they still do abortions, and that's legal. That would be if the girl was raped, she can still choose an abortion towards the end of pregnancy, or if there is like a medical issue to do with the baby or herself, if it's unsafe for either of them, they'll do abortion up until the end. But otherwise, it's legal up until 12 weeks, and yeah. So that was just a quicker background about abortion. You can see it there. These are some celebrity stories of abortion. So I just put these in, and there were lots more that I found. But Jack Nicholson, his teenage mom was pressured to have an abortion, which he refused. And he said, "I'm very conscious of my constituency in terms of abortion, because I'm positively against it. I don't have the right to any other view. My only emotion is gratitude, literally, for my life." And then Nicki Minaj had an abortion when she was a teenager. "I thought I was going to die. I was a teenager. It was the hardest thing I'd ever gone through. The decision to have an abortion," she added, "has haunted me all my life." And then Lecrae, him and his girlfriend had an abortion as a teenager. And he said, "But I was too selfish with my time. Scared my genes were not going to survive. So I dropped it off at the clinic. That day, a part of us died." Yeah, so these are, there's a lot of people that have spoken out against it afterwards, and there's so many people that have spoken out and have also said it was an okay experience and they're doing fine. The realities are, though, is that the majority of men and women go through post-abortion stress afterwards, and counselling has to be an option for them. They can't, it's already such a secret issue. If you can walk into a clinic without any consent, do an abortion and go home, and no one has to know. And if it's already such a secret, then there's no chance to grieve. There's no chance to have a funeral. There's no chance to actually heal from what happened. And and post-abortion stress is actually a type of PTSD. So abortion is considered a trauma. So PTSD would be after a war or after a death, or people go through that, and abortion is considered a trauma as well. So and you can think of people going through it in silence, and that's such a hard thing, and that shame comes in, and so much comes onto them simply because they're in silence. So and then they have the option to parent. So there is always a counsellor around, usually, to help with a teenager that has chosen to parent. So she is not alone. She can apply for a child support grant from the Department of Social Services. So the government actually gives money to teenagers that are pregnant and have chosen to keep their child. She can apply to receive maintenance from the baby's father. So by law, the father of the baby has to give her a monthly money. Government hospitals and clinics give free health care for the child. It is possible for the girl to have a child and still return to school at some schools. Whether or not she is married, the baby's father is legally responsible to support the child financially for 21 years. The father cannot decide what should happen to the baby, which was a question that you had asked earlier, nor should his decision be the final one when she is pregnant and is deciding what option to choose. It is, however, a good idea for him to be involved in the decision-making process. So counsellors should actually say the father's decision is so vital and he has such a part to play. And then adoption. So all of this is also just a very awareness on what each of these mean, how do they look, what are the laws surrounding it. So adoption, how does that work? When she is ready, she can visit a social worker who will explain the whole process. She receives counselling to prepare for the adoption. So counselling is always done before an adoption takes place. After the birth, she has 60 days of which she can withdraw consent. So this has often been the case where couples are waiting for a baby and the social worker calls them to say, we have a baby available, and it's happened so many times over and over again. But the mom that actually has the baby, because she has a 60-day window afterwards, she can actually choose to keep a baby within that time. So usually what happens is at the birth, a social worker will take the baby away straight away, so that she doesn't have a chance to bond with the baby. But she still has this window. So the baby will be kept in almost a halfway home until the days are up, and then the baby will be placed with the adoptive parents. Once the judge has made an adoption order, it cannot be changed. There are 3 types of adoptions. There's disclosed, which is where the biological mother knows the biological family and can visit them. So that would be like where an aunt adopts the baby. She knows the aunt, she would go visit the aunt. There's open, non-disclosed, which is where the biological mother knows everything about the adopted parents besides the surname and the address. So this is where that she would get to actually choose the family, but she wouldn't have contact with them, or she wouldn't be able to go and just visit or pop in. And she may send letters and gifts through the adoption agency, but has no contact. And then closed, non-disclosed is where the biological mother has no information about the adopted parents and never has contact. So also depending, so there's 2 sides. A lot of social workers might only specialize in 1 or 2 of these, and so depending on who that girl uses, whichever social worker, might depend on what she chooses of these 3. But most often the girl should have the decision to say, I'm going to have this baby and actually never want to have contact again. They can choose that last option completely, and if they choose to have contact, or they choose to let their grandmother adopt the babies, and that should be completely her decision of what to do.
Would the child ever be allowed to make contact with the mother when she gets to
I think the age is 18 years old or 21 years old.
So even with the closed, non-disclosed, if the mother doesn't want to be contacted,
that would be that would completely with the social worker. I think in that case, the social worker would contact the mother to say your child wants to meet you. And if it's years later, the mother then has a decision to say yes or no.
Is there any information on whether it's better for the child's development, if it's better for them to not know their biological mother and just know their adoptive parents as their parents, or for them to know their biological mother?
There is both, and it also depends on the communities that those children grow up in. I think it is healthy to have, obviously, a healthy family system where you've got your mom and your dad and they go together. But nowadays, what is a healthy family system? Every family looks so different. I do know, I had contact with a lady who used to work in America, and very much in these kind of situations, and what she specialized in was where the mom was where the adopted mom and the biological mom would have contact with each other. So it couldn't be an all the time because that's not healthy. So it's not healthy for the biological mom to pop in for every dinner, and because then that family can't grow as a system. But I think once a week they would send an email. So they would have their time once a week where the biological mom and the adoptive mom would email each other. And that was such a healthy system. And the way that they would describe it to the child is just as though a child doesn't question having two grandmothers with your, because your mom's dad, whatever. Just as a child doesn't like question having two grandmothers or two grandfathers. So in this way they would say you have two mothers, and that's just how they would describe it to them. And often, and they said they never really had issues with a child not understanding that. But obviously boundaries are so important. Yeah. And then, just to end off, I had this beautiful saying that said, to be pregnant is to be vitally alive, thoroughly woman, and undoubtedly inhabited. Soul and spirit are stretched, along with the body, making pregnancy a time of transition, growth, and profound beginning.
Sure.
I just thought that was a beautiful saying. So, yes, so that's us. Thank you for attending my workshop. I hope you learned a lot. I don't know if you have any comments or any questions.
Very interesting. Yeah, they don't teach us that in school, so it's very something they should probably facilitate for schools.
Okay. Thank you.